The role of the mind in the development of chronic illness. Have you ever stopped to consider whether what you're experiencing today, constant pain, a lingering illness, relentless fatigue, might be directly connected to what you think and feel every single day? It might sound absurd at first, but the truth is, the way you think and feel may be creating, fueling, or worsening a chronic illness in your body. And understanding this could be your first real step toward healing. We live in a society where chronic illness has become normal. High blood pressure, diabetes, migraines, fibromyalgia, autoimmune diseases, digestive disorders. The list goes on. Many people spend years seeking treatments, medications, and diagnoses, and still suffer. But what few realize is that many of these illnesses have a silent origin, and that origin is found in the mind. Fields like psychosomatic medicine and psychoneuroimmunology are revealing that chronic diseases are not only the result of genetics or diet. In many cases, they are the physical manifestations of unresolved emotions, toxic thought patterns, and untreated trauma. In other words, the mind collapses, and the body responds. The human mind is an incredibly powerful machine. It controls hormones, regulates sleep, activates the immune system, impacts digestion, and alters blood pressure. And all of this can be affected by our mental and emotional stimuli. Constant negative thoughts like fear, anger, anxiety, guilt, or resentment create chronic stress. And chronic stress is one of the main gateways to chronic illness. So here's your first invitation to reflect. What have you been thinking about every day? Because your thoughts don't stay trapped in your head. They spread through your body in the form of chemistry, energy, and inflammation. When you remain in a negative emotional state for too long, your brain activates your body's internal alarm system. The HPA axis, hypothalamus pituitary adrenal. This system releases hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, which are useful in moments of emergency, but harmful when elevated for too long. This imbalance affects your body in several ways. Weakens the immune system, increases inflammation, disrupts gut function, harms hormonal balance, raises blood pressure, impairs glucose metabolism, affects sleep, appetite, and digestion. Over time, these small imbalances turn into symptoms, which eventually turn into diagnoses. And that is when many people start treating the disease, not realizing that it may have been built over years of mental and emotional wear and tear. Have you ever heard of people who become seriously ill with no clear medical cause? That's not coincidence. It's the mind collecting the price for what the heart hasn't resolved. Let's take a look at a few common examples. High blood pressure is often linked to repressed anger, anxiety, and emotional suppression. Gastritis and ulcers are strongly connected to chronic fear, inner tension, and excessive self-pressure. Chronic migraines can result from mental overload, perfectionism, and unexpressed emotional tension. Fibromyalgia, marked by widespread pain, is frequently associated with emotional trauma, depression, and prolonged stress. Autoimmune diseases often stem from deep internal conflict, self-criticism, and unresolved feelings of rejection. Even the Bible, long before modern medicine, revealed this truth. In Proverbs 18:14 it says, "The human spirit can endure in sickness, but a crushed spirit who can bear?" This means that inner strength, emotional health, can sustain a sick body. But when the soul is ill, even the body can't carry the weight. Jesus also demonstrated this clearly. He healed people with love, freed them from guilt, taught them to forgive, often before healing their bodies, because he knew there is no true healing while the mind is still bound to the past, to pain, or to fear. Today, science agrees. A Harvard University study found that a pessimistic mindset increases the risk of heart disease by up to 40%. On the other hand, positive thinking, faith, gratitude, and elevated emotions stimulate the immune system and reduce inflammation levels. Now here comes your second crucial insight. You may be treating your illness, but are you treating your mind? Because without a change in mindset, there is no lasting cure. Chronic illnesses are often the body's cry for help, a sign that something inside you needs to be faced, healed, forgiven, or restructured. Sometimes disease is the only way the soul has to stop you, make you look inward, and force transformation. But is it possible to reverse that? Yes. And it starts with self-awareness. Understand your emotions. Accept your emotional pain without judgment. Forgive who needs to be forgiven, including yourself. Let go of the past. Replace thoughts of scarcity with thoughts of life. Cultivate faith, hope, love, and gratitude. These things don't just change your spiritual energy. They change your biochemistry. They transform your internal environment. They create the conditions for your body to shift from defense mode to healing mode. Integrative therapies such as psychotherapy, meditation, prayer, positive visualization, breathing exercises, and even emotional fasting, stepping away from toxic content, are powerful tools that calm the mind and, as a result, relieve the body. True healing is not just stopping the symptoms. It's transforming the root that caused the illness. And that root is almost always in the mind and emotions. Of course, this doesn't mean abandoning medical treatments. Quite the opposite. Uniting science and spirituality is the most powerful path. Caring for the body and the mind, the medicine and the soul, the physical and the invisible. So here's your third call to action. Maybe the most important. If you want to stop treating symptoms and start transforming your health, start with your mind. The healing you've been searching for might be waiting on one simple decision: to change the way you think. Now share this message with someone who's been battling a chronic illness. Maybe what they need today isn't another prescription, but a new perspective. And you might be the one to offer it. Wishing you success always, and gratitude. The mind as a weapon of mass destruction. Reality or fiction? Have you ever stopped to consider that perhaps the most dangerous weapon in human history was never dropped from a plane, attached to a missile, or hidden in a bunker? What if the real nuclear warhead is between your ears, fueled by beliefs, hatred, delusions, or unshakable convictions? Imagine a war that doesn't begin with sirens but with an idea, a mental virus, a seed planted in the collective consciousness, silent, invisible, but deadly. Throughout history, ideas have killed more than weapons. Misguided convictions have destroyed civilizations. Misinterpreted dogmas have lit pyres, built gas chambers, and dug mass graves. This is the dark territory we now enter, the mind as a weapon of mass destruction. Reality or fiction? First, let me provoke you with a question. If you discovered that you were armed right now, and your weapon is your mind, would you still think the way you do? The Bible, for instance, is full of examples showing how the human mind, contaminated by pride, envy, fanaticism, or lust for power, can cause moral and social collapse. Remember Cain and Abel. Humanity's first murder didn't happen out of physical revenge, but from a silent war inside Cain's heart. Envy fermented, rejection consumed him, the mind armed the hand, and blood was spilled. Or think of Lucifer, a being created as an angel of light who, through pride of mind, not strength, attempted to seize the Creator's throne. The result? A cosmic rebellion, a fall, chaos, all born from a distorted idea of power. The heavenly wars began in the mind, just like many of the wars here on earth. You don't have to look far for modern examples. In 1994, in Rwanda, a massacre wiped out around 800,000 people in just 100 days. And how did it start? With an idea. A single phrase repeated over the radio. The Tutsis are cockroaches. Dehumanization was built mentally. And once you believe the other is no longer human, killing becomes cleansing. It was the mind, corrupted by propaganda and hate, that killed. The machete was just an extension. In fact, that's the true nature of physical weapons. Extensions of the psyche. No bomb arms itself. No drone is launched without a human decision. No finger pulls the trigger without a thought commanding it. The real red button is in the conscience, or in the absence of it. Now think with me. What if the human mind is more powerful than an atomic bomb because it doesn't just destroy bodies, it destroys identities, cultures, entire futures? Today, with the advancement of technology, the battlefield has shifted from the ground to the virtual, and from gunpowder to information. Social platforms are sophisticated weapons of manipulation. And the scariest part? You participate in this every day, perhaps without realizing it. Every time you share fake news, every time you follow a narrative without checking its source, you become a channel of mass mental contamination. Have you heard of the theory of digital emotional contagion? It's real. People exposed to negative or polarized content on social media are more likely to replicate that behavior, forming bubbles of hatred, paranoia, and rage. And here's the thing. Today's great ideological wars don't use tanks. They use memes, tweets, hashtags, short videos with distorted truths. These are short-range cognitive weapons with long-term side effects. And the question returns. Is this fiction? Or are we already living in a new kind of war? Not for territory, but for minds. Pause. Now breathe, because the next question may be more intimate than comfortable. How much of your thinking is truly your own? The entertainment, political, religious, and consumer industries have known how to manipulate minds for decades. From advertising that creates insecurities to sell solutions, to politics that polarize to maintain control. The mental bombardment is constant. You are the target. You are the minefield. And the most dangerous thing, you can be used as a missile. If you repeat without thinking, believe without questioning, hate without knowing. The armed mind is subtle. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It murmurs between the lines in dogmas, in ideologies. And once it's loaded with fear, ignorance, or fanaticism, it can explode and destroy families, friendships, reputations, futures. Let's go back to the biblical plane. When Jesus was tempted in the desert, Satan didn't bring an army or a sword. He used words. He used scripture itself distorted. It was a mental battle, a war of interpretations. Because even good, when misunderstood, can become a weapon for evil. Now, an important pause for reflection. What if the greatest destruction of the 21st century isn't caused by bombs, but by minds that are broken, misinformed, and desperate? And the picture becomes even more complex when we bring mental health into the center of this discussion. Disorders like depression, anxiety, paranoia, and delusions of grandeur are not just personal dramas. They are mental illnesses that, when combined with access to technology, weapons, or social influence, can become devastating. We've seen school shooters driven by delusions, religious leaders who led masses into collective suicide, political figures who triggered genocides based on warped worldviews. They all had one weapon in common, an out-of-control mind, or rather, a mind completely convinced of its own truth. And here we reach the most unsettling point. What happens when the mind believes it is right, even when it's dangerously wrong? The truth is, there are no neutral minds. Every mind is feeding something, love or hate, hope or despair, creation or destruction. That's why thinking is a sacred act. Thinking is more dangerous than acting, because every action is born from a thought. Whoever controls the mind controls the world. Whoever loses the mind loses everything. Now listen closely to this final question. Is your mind being a weapon or a bridge? The destructive power of the mind is only real because its creative power is just as immense. The same mind that imagines a bomb can imagine peace. The same mind that creates a dictatorship can write a constitution. The mind is a furnace. It either burns or warms depending on what fuels it. But perhaps the most important thing right now is this: to recognize that all of us, without exception, carry this potential. We can be healers or predators, mentors or manipulators. And that choice begins in the silence of a single thought. We've reached the end of this journey, but it's only the beginning inside you. Because now you know, the mind is indeed a weapon. What will you do with yours? Thank you. Keep going for more knowledge. Gratitude.